Good evening. I'm Juneau Empire reporter Alex McCarthy.
I'm KTOO reporter Jacob Resnick.
Welcome to the Juneau Votes Assembly Candidate Forum. We'll be hearing from each of the 7 candidates running in the 3 races.
Assembly members serve the community as a whole and are responsible for overseeing the government of the city and borough of Juneau. The District 1 and District 2 candidates have residency requirements, though voters can participate in all 3 races.
Running in the area-wide race is incumbent Maria Gladziszewski. She's facing a write-in challenge from Andy Hughes.
District 1's residency requirement runs from Thane to downtown Juneau and Lemon Creek. It also includes Douglas Island. District 1 incumbent Jesse Kiehl is facing challengers Loretto Jones and Chuck Collins.
District 2 encompasses the Mendenhall Valley, Auk Bay, and Out the Road. Incumbent Debbie White is facing challenger Rob Edwardson.
Candidates will now have 30 seconds each to introduce themselves. We apologize for the short timing, but there's a lot of candidates and a lot of issues to get to. We'll start with Maria Gladziszewski.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm Maria Gladziszewski, running for the area-wide seat. Thanks for everybody watching on Facebook Live. I've been honored to serve on the Assembly the last few years, and I like to say I work for everyone in Juneau, not just the people that voted for me or the people that agree with me or put their yard side in my yard side in their yard. I think if we hear and respect everyone, Juneau gets better government, a stronger community, and basically more enduring solutions. So that's guided my service on the Assembly so far, and would do so again if I'm honored to be reelected.
Next up, Andy Hughes.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. 44 years ago, I was hired by the state to conduct an economic analysis for the Haines to St. James Bay EIS, today known as Juneau Axis. Since then, I've worked for the Department of Highways and Department of Transportation until my retirement this last May as the Regional Planning Chief. During this period, I was a single parent raising 4 children here in Juneau.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Chuck Collins.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here tonight. I've decided to run for Assembly as I didn't feel like my voice was being heard at the Assembly level when I complained about crime in our neighborhood, issues with downtown business having to deal with vagrancy. Felt like maybe we were spending money that could have went to better projects, and since I wasn't heard, I decided I had to do something about it. So I'm bringing the voice of people that are not heard to the Assembly.
Chuck. Loretto Jones up next.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody for coming out tonight. I think it's important that we're all meeting the candidates. I'll be available for questions afterwards. My name is Loretto Jones, and I'm running for Assembly District 1. I believe in working toward a sustainable fiscal management with our government. I'd like to see stop the crime. It's up to 300% by helping the homeless and the police and firefighters. I'd like to see teachers paid more, and I'd like to see the leaks stopped.
Thank you. Mr. Jesse Kiehl.
Good evening. Thanks to KTOO and the Empire for hosting this forum and for everyone for coming and watching. For the last 6 years, it's been a real privilege to work for Juneau on the Assembly. As we've grappled with our city's challenges and tried to seize our opportunities, I've tried to bring a long-term vision to the issues. I think about the 2 teenage daughters my wife and I are raising here in Juneau, and want to try and build a bright future for them and for your kids to live, work, and raise their families in our capital city. I look forward to our discussions tonight.
Thank you. On to District 2, Rob Edwardson.
Thank you for being here, audience. Thank you to the organizers. I'm Rob Edwardson. I'm a lifelong Alaskan, born in Sitka, raised in Ketchikan. I was a fisherman. I was a fish processor, and I worked in the Coast Guard for a very long time. After the Coast Guard, I started working for the state of Alaska. So I guess what I have to say is you've already paid for my experience and my skills, so I'm offering those to you on the Assembly. Thanks.
And Debbie White.
Thank you, Jacob and Alex, and thank you for this forum. My name is Debbie White. I've been in Juneau since 1974. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I have 2 grown sons, one still lives in Juneau. I'm also a business owner, and I feel like I bring a private industry perspective to the Assembly that would otherwise not be heard. I come up from a heavy background of community service, and I consider myself to be fairly responsive and very accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to the question and answer segment, the following questions will go to all of the candidates. Our timekeeper will help keep their answers to just 40 seconds each. We'll start with Maria Gladziszewski here on the left. Hypothetically, if you win, what are your top priorities going forward?
Top priorities have to do with, first of all, the city's budget and fiscal conservatism, if you will. We need to live within our means. The only way the city has money to spend is it for taxing citizens, and we've done a good job and a decent job, I would say, in the last few years to get the city on a sustainable budget. When I first got on, we were spending some more of our savings than we are, so I think that's really important. We have a lot of facilities and a lot of great things in this community, and everybody wants us to keep up everything, and it's going to come soon to a point where we're going to have to figure out what we can actually afford.
Sure. Mr. Hughes.
My top priorities are, again, the budget, having a sustainable budget, a budget that provides fully funds our essential infrastructure and services, and also a budget that attempts to make Juneau a more affordable community. And by that I say, well, taking the sales tax off food, putting more land on the market to make housing more affordable, and also providing for our security and making it a safe community.
Thank you. Chuck Collins.
Well, to start with, I want to strengthen our first responders, especially our police and fire departments. I want to be able to look at my neighbors and know that I've done the best job for them. Secondly, economic development. We talk a lot about affordable housing. Nobody knows what affordable housing is, but if we have economic development and make good jobs, houses become affordable. And, I want to see us do some fiscal stability. I think that we've spent way too much money out of our savings account, and we just seem to want to tax and spend at the city level, and we can't do that.
Thank you. Loretto Jones.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Alaskan grown, and I've lived in Juneau for over 40 years, and I've never seen it like this before. The reason I am running, primarily there's 4 basic ones, is I want to make sure that our first responders, our firefighters, our police officers, the ones that go into danger, are funded. They need 6 more firefighters, and we need that in this community. We need to stop using our savings. We need to seriously start tightening our belts and looking at private enterprise coming in and having full-time jobs for Alaskans in Juneau. We need to stop using our savings to finance the city. We need to start a process for downsizing.
Thank you. Jesse Kiehl.
As state budget cuts have put our economy into a down cycle, we need a steady hand at the city. We need to maintain the foundations from which our city will grow when things start looking up again. So that includes strong public safety and to continue the investments we've been making in picking up slack from the state where they have not been doing maybe as much as they had and as much as they should. It means addressing some of the root causes of our crime issues. The opioid epidemic is nationwide and it hasn't spared Juneau. In a world where more and more jobs can be done anywhere with an internet connection, we also have to continue to provide a good quality of life for people to choose Juneau.
Thank you. Rob Edwardson.
I think things in Juneau are actually pretty good, and the economy is strong, even though the state economy isn't, but things aren't good for everybody. And as far as my priorities go, life safety comes first. You've heard that theme here a little bit so far. But I'm talking about life safety for people who don't have homes, the homeless, and life safety for people who have addictions, mainly the opioid epidemic that's actually increasing. I think, as Jesse said, we need to deal with the root causes of these things and come up with solutions together.
Thank you. Debbie White.
Thank you. first of all, we need to show the outside world that Juneau is open for business, and that means having business-friendly policies and land use policies that will allow our economy to grow. We definitely need to exercise more fiscal restraint and look at other ways for efficiencies, and in the process make sure that we protect those core services. But I really think that the key is having a strong enough economy where everybody has the opportunity to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The mayor has appointed a task force to consider streamlining the city's mining ordinance. Supporters say it could help bring back more mining to the region. Skeptics say it would eliminate the city's power to take a hard look at proposals. Where do you stand? We'll start with Mr. Andy Hughes.
Well, jobs are important to this community, and mining provides good jobs. I believe that we do need to review our mining ordinance. We need to streamline it where we can without jeopardizing safeguards to the things that are important to the downtown area, our water supply, and our environment. But if we have duplication within the ordinance, it costs both developer and the city.
Thank you. Mr. Chuck Collins.
I also want to talk about duplication of services within that ordinance. There's a number of things in that ordinance that need to be streamlined, as there are duplicate writings of both state and federal law. On top of that, the CBJ does not have the expertise locally on staff to actually enforce or make that law work, and thus, if we decided we were going to use that, we would once again have to hire more people, and I think that a leaner and meaner CBJ government is what's called for right now. I'm in favor of streamlining the mining ordinance and keeping industry on our side.
Thank you. Ms. Loretto Jones.
Thank you. We need jobs in Juneau. We need jobs that are going to help build Juneau back. And I think one of the things we have to look about with mining is we've got a lot of people right now that are in the mining field here. But we have to look at environmental issues as well. What are you going to do with the tailings ponds? How is that going to affect? We should only hire local, nobody from the outside. Let's bring jobs to Alaska. UAS already has a program in place, and they're teaching people how to mine. And our water supply. We must keep Juneau safe.
Thank you. Mr. Jesse Kiehl.
Thank you. We know that you can do mining right in Southeast Alaska. I think Greens Creek and Kensington are great examples. Doing it right under the downtown business district and uphill from our main water supply is a higher bar. So the ordinance as introduced, I'm worried, takes away all our local control and simply says, whatever the feds and state will permit, it's great for Juneau. That's not an approach I can endorse. I do think that if we can make our process move faster and be streamlined, remove duplication, and still have it fair to Juneau residents and fair to someone who wants to develop a mine, we've got an opportunity to do that. So I'm keeping an open mind.
Mr. Rob Edwardson.
I don't support what's being called here streamlining the ordinance. I don't accept the premise that it's streamlining. I've actually come from this field, and what this is land use adjudication. And what that means is each level of government determines for that level of government whether or not that's a wise land use. So I don't think that the city and borough of Juneau can surrender its due diligence responsibilities to make sure that whatever mine we open within the city and borough of Juneau is good for the community. The state's not responsible for Juneau doing that, neither is the federal government. Juneau is.
Ms. Debbie White.
Yes, thank you, Jacob. Right now, there are no current proposals on the table to consider opening any additional mines in Juneau. This is not just about the AJ mine. This is also about property out at Herbert River and several other locations. Nobody wants to risk our clean air and our clean water for a buck. However, we also need to keep in mind that we have 2 mines operating within the borough that have contributed millions of dollars to directly to the CBJ in the form of property tax and the multiplier effect from the jobs that they provide. So I'm willing to look at it with an open mind. Thank you.
And Ms. Maria Gladziszewski.
The current ordinance was passed in 1989 unanimously by the Assembly. That means people on the left, people on the right worked hard to come to agreement. And so that would be the goal in my mind of if we're going to look at it, and I don't object to that. It's been 28 years. Maybe there are some things that have changed with federal law or state law, but any changes that we make has to have local control over local issues. I don't want to surrender any of that control to the state, to a state permitter or a federal permitter. I think we need to make sure that Juneau's interests are protected. And we need to do it with a stable environment for a mining partner to join us.
Thank you, Maria Gladziszewski.
The next question will start with Chuck Collins, who actually mentioned this a minute ago. Firefighters recently appealed to the Assembly saying that they're dangerously short-staffed. Should the Assembly commit more resources to the department?
I think it's a shame that the fire department would have to come forward and ask the Assembly and tell them that they were shorthanded, and that I think it's a shame on all of us as citizens of Juneau that we would allow this to happen. So yes, I would fully support them. We can talk about quality of life all you want, but it's pretty hard to have a quality of life if you're not safe in your own house, or your business burns down, or something like that. Juneau's a fantastic place to live, raise a family. I'm on my third generation here, so I want my kids and my grandkids to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Loretto Jones.
I've spoken to 2 firefighters about their concerns, and the biggest problem they have is retention, because they don't have as many volunteers as they used to have. Their other concerns are retirement and benefits because of the way they have to use their bodies and the amount of trauma that they deal with going into these buildings that are on fire. Yes, and I agree with Chuck, we shouldn't even hesitate because they are the first responders to anything. They're the ones who find people. They're the ones who go into burning buildings. They're the ones that are the first responders to any cruise ship industry. They are here for us.
Thank you. Jesse Kiehl.
Thank you. It's a great question. And in our conversations with the fire department and with firefighters, clearly this is something that the Assembly needs to bring a new focus to. And it looks to me, looking at the numbers, like for all the really valiant efforts to increase the number of volunteers we have and for the great work volunteers do, it is time to look at more professional firefighters. The numbers are up year-round. It's not just summertime tourism for medical calls. And so I'm interested in diving deep into this. And I'm very proud to say that I've got the endorsement of the International Association of Firefighters, Juneau Local.
Rob Edwardson.
I know their lifestyle. I lived a first responder lifestyle for 20 years as an advanced shipboard firefighter and a trainer and a damage control training team leader. I've responded to shipboard, shoreside, and wildland fires, and I definitely sympathize with where they're coming from. Being short-staffed isn't necessarily like being a firefighter being short-staffed isn't like somebody in an office being short-staffed. There's actually real risks to it. Crew endurance management, how people make decisions. I think it's very important to make sure that the size of our responder departments is appropriate for their workload.
Okay. Debbie White.
Thank you. One of my first public service things in Juneau was as a volunteer. I joined the volunteer fire department in 1989 when my youngest child was 6 weeks old. Since then, the training requirements for volunteers have gone up exponentially, which is part of why they're having a hard time keeping the volunteers where they need them. However, it's a great breeding ground for homegrown firefighters that are actually from Juneau. Their call volumes are up significantly to actually a frightening level. And like Jesse, I'm happy to say I did get the IAFF endorsement. I've been in their shoes, I've worn their boots. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Gladziszewski.
I would say that, yes, that needs to be looked at. The fire department clearly needs some more resources, whether it be volunteers or paid people. I too, like Jesse and Debbie, have the endorsement of the local firefighters, which I'm proud of. I think we need to figure out what calls have increased, what is it, the ambulance calls, the fire calls, and how can we address that? I was an EMT for 12 years, and that's a tough job. All of those jobs are tough jobs, and we need to look at to see what we can afford and get those firefighters the resources they need to be safe. Safety obviously is a #1 priority for any local government.
Thank you. Andy Hughes?
Expansion of our fire department is crucial to addressing the emergency needs of the community. I've talked to a couple of our firemen, and retention is an issue. Their salaries appear not to be competitive with, for instance, the firefighters in Anchorage, and we do need to take a look at their salaries, the demand on their forces, and
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Okay, a seniors group is pushing for a return to a complete exemption of sales tax for those over the age of 65. The city's finance department says this would cost $1.8 million in the first year and keep climbing as the community's population ages. So we're asking each candidate where they stand and why, and we're starting with Loretto Jones.
I would support that, primarily because when you look at the food bank, the people that volunteer there are seniors. A lot of the people that you see working in different areas here in Juneau are seniors. They're volunteering their services. Just because you turn 65 does not mean that you are making the kind of money you did when you were 42. We've got to take care of our seniors. It's called longevity. They've been here. They want to stay here. Let's help them remain in their hometown, because they too are very important to Juneau. They babysit, they take care of their kids. They're critical.
Mr. Jesse Kiehl.
You know, this was probably the toughest vote I've taken on the Assembly. When we reformed the senior sales tax, it cost almost $3 million a year, and the cost was growing every year. It was headed on a rocket sled towards 6 or 7% of our general government budget. It was not sustainable, and it was at risk of being taken away entirely, which would not be all right with me. So the reform we passed made sure that not just poor seniors, but the lower income third of our seniors don't pay any more. We rejected the notion from some who are leading a special interest effort now to pull up the ladder behind them so nobody who comes after them get anything. And we'll continue to honor our seniors into the future and not price anybody out of town.
Thank you, Jesse Kiehl. Mr. Rob Edwardson.
I support it. While I respect the work that was done by the Assembly a couple of years ago, and I fully understand how difficult it was, my experience is, as a disabled veteran, one of the things that I came here for, one of the things that I'm able to afford to come here for, is because there's a tax exemption for the first $150,000. And that's not what we're talking about, but the thing that I'm talking about is people make plans based on limited incomes, and I'm worried that some of the people may not have been covered. That said, buzzer's going to go off.
Thank you, Rob Edwardson. Ms. Debbie White.
Okay, thank you. I'll pick up where Jesse left off. These changes were necessary in order to keep the program sustainable for the long term. If that were not the case, as he said, there would be no talk of discontinuing it into the future. So a lot of people are also bringing up the fact that sales tax revenue is down. I'd like to remind you that Alaska is in a recession. We've also lost 400 people in our economy. And by the way, I am not interested in revisiting or revising or eliminating the property tax exemption as alleged in some recent ads. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie White. Maria Gladziszewski.
Thanks. I support the sales tax exemption for seniors on essentials, including food and utilities. I was worried, like the other members said, that it was at risk of being eliminated completely. I think we should do what we can for our seniors. But again, it was the trajectory of that meant more and more people in our community were paying no sales tax. That shifts the burden to the younger people who, the person who answers the phone in my office would be paying sales tax, but once I got to be 65, I wouldn't, and that just didn't seem fair to me. So I think I wanted to keep it for all seniors, some benefit for all seniors, and not do the other option, which was to just bring up the ladder, as Jesse said.
Mr. Andy Hughes.
I support the sales tax exemption for seniors. It's important, I believe, to keep the promises of previous Assembly commitments to retirees on fixed income. It's important to support the retention of our senior population as a valuable resource in terms of the income that they expend in our community. Seniors are a valuable source of volunteers with large, diverse pool of experience and knowledge. Seniors are a source of jobs, often starting small businesses and by leasing senior housing, enrolling in assisted care facilities paid for by insurance programs and their estates.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Chuck Collins.
I definitely am for the senior sales tax exemption. Where they're coming up with their numbers on the tax that's supposedly being paid is anybody's guess, because it's not tracked as it says right now. And how do we know that the amount of sales tax that we would pick up is actually changed, or that we're going to force somebody else to pay more tax? I believe Amazon Prime probably has more to do with that than anything else. When I talk to my friends, and I have many of them that own businesses, a very large number of them have complained about losing business because there's no sales tax exemption. Seniors can live anywhere.
Thank you, Chuck Collins.
Juneau remains relatively safe with low violent crime, but as many of you have said, petty crime is up, thefts especially. What concrete measures should the Assembly take to help reverse the trend? And we'll start this one with Jesse Kiehl.
Thank you. As I said earlier, the nationwide opioid epidemic unfortunately hasn't spared the capital city, and it's driving crime. So we will continue, if I'm fortunate enough to serve again, our focus on law enforcement to interdict drugs, to bust dealers. At the same time, we have to continue to work on root causes. We've done great work with Bartlett expanding treatment. I think there are more steps we can do working with Bartlett to get more people into treatment. We also need to focus on some of the mental health problems. The state's got a new law that will restrict or reduce new addictions through prescriptions.
Thank you. Rob Edwardson.
As far as law enforcement, I agree the opioid epidemic is driving a lot of the crime. I think we can see that every day. I think there's a possibility that also SB 91 from a couple of years ago might have been rolled out a little bit too early, and some of the groundwork wasn't laid ahead to make sure that it worked properly. There's going to be probably a spirited debate coming up about SB 91, so I won't try to preempt that. But again, as Jesse said, the root causes are the things that need to be dealt with. Deal with opioid epidemic and sentencing.
Thank you, Rob Edwardson. Debbie White.
Okay, thank you. I'm pretty sure there's not anybody in this room or anybody listening, not one of us, that hasn't been touched by either the drug addiction issues or the crime issues, and they're very interrelated. The Assembly recently gave some leeway to Bartlett Hospital to expand some treatment options, and that's part of what's on the 1% on the ballot as well, to allow us to do that. We also need to continue to work with JPD. They have, like any law enforcement agency in the country, they have a recruitment issue. So it'd be nice if we could grow our own like we do our firefighters.
Thank you, Debbie White. Maria Gladziszewski.
You asked for concrete steps. Medication-assisted treatment, Bartlett has started that. We should continue to expand that. The 1%, as people have said, we're going to be remodeling the Rainforest Recovery to make that a better center for opioid-addicted people. we need beefed up monitoring prescription drug programs. The state passed a law that will help with that, to reduce people's access to opioids to begin with, so they don't start. We hired an extra prosecutor to pick up the slack where, with state resources decreasing, we were finding they weren't being, the lower property crimes weren't getting prosecuted. So we're going to do that, continue to do that for our community, all those things at the same time in order to help those problems.
Thank you, Maria Gladziszewski. Andy Hughes?
Theft in this community is up some 300%. And it doesn't, people ask, well, is there a safer place to live in the borough than elsewhere, or where I'm at? And the bad news is it's borough-wide. You can't avoid it. That said, our police department needs additional resources to support dealing with the immediate situation. In the long term, we need to increase our capacity of treatment of mentally ill, capacity to treat our addicts.
Thank you, Andy Hughes. Chuck Collins?
You've heard a lot tonight about root causes of this, and I think some of the root causes are probably on us. We have allowed our police department to be understaffed. We have dealt with have less officers on patrol, and we have to get back to the way we were. Another thing is that we have to take care of ourselves. This isn't all on the police. This is also on us as neighbors. We need to start watching out for each other. I had to start a neighborhood watch group in my neighborhood because we had theft bad this year, and it is pretty much washed it away.
Thank you, Chuck Collins. Loretto Jones?
I've spoken to detectives and police officers on the beat. And one of the biggest concern, one police officer said, and he, you could tell, had post-traumatic stress disorder. He'd been through a lot in one day. And he said to me, by the time I write the report, he's going to be out. So what's the point of writing the report? And I think truly, honestly, we need to put more teeth. Senate Bill 91 had no teeth in it. We need more people in the district attorney's office. We've lost 4,800 state jobs in the last year. And if we do not have teeth, we cannot enforce.
All right, thank you, Loretto Jones. About 25 minutes left. We're going to switch to the next section, which is actually tailored questions for each candidate. We have a specific question for each candidate, and we are starting with the challengers in alphabetical order. So we're going to kind of hop around a little bit here. We'll start with Chuck Collins. It's a little bit of a continuation of what we were talking about just a minute ago, but you're running on more of a law and order campaign, and talking about downtown and how much different, I guess, it is now. And you've spoken of the need to take back control of the town. What does this mean exactly in practice, and what specific measures would you take to ensure that? And we'll actually have a minute per candidate to respond to this. So, Chuck Collins.
Well, as far as taking back, especially our town, I think that it's time that as owners, citizens, people that actually live and work here, that we need to have more control over our own property. It's a shame that when I try to go buy a taco for lunchtime that I get hit up by 2 or 3 panhandlers, and if I ignore them, I might get yelled at, called bad names. It's a shame on a Saturday morning if I take my grandkids downtown, I have to explain to them why people are naked in the Marine Park. This is not the Juneau that I envisioned living in for the rest of my life. I've had a business downtown for 20 years. There's always been some issues there, but nothing like the last couple of years. Look, if you think Juneau is as good as it was 2 or 3 years ago, then I'm happy for you. But as for me, when I have complained about issues with needles on the end of my street, having to run people off, calling the police 7-8 times a week to move people out, that's not what I signed up for.
What specific things would you do, just to follow up real quick?
What specific things? Well, like I said before, I think that number one, we need to staff up JPD. Number two, we need to give them ordinances. We need to give them tools that they can use with. Number three, we need to have a place where if they pick up an inebriate, that they have a sleep-off center. And I think the Assembly's made some, pretty good strides in that way. My issue is that we seem to balk at actually giving people what I term as hard love. There are some people that, and our officers deal with them day after day after day, that need a little break from their addiction so that they can put their life in shape, hopefully.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Chuck Collins. This next question goes to Rob Edwardson. This is your first time running for office. Your day job is as a legislative staffer for Justin Parrish, State House Democrat. How would you ensure your political independence on the Assembly?
I'm going to guess at what you mean. I wasn't hired actually to mirror exactly what the legislator who hired me believed. He hired me because he likes debate. He likes alternative opinions, and we discuss things, and the best argument usually wins, and he calls the shots. So really nothing is going to change. You can probably see from the viewpoints that we don't share all the same viewpoints on every issue. And that's really not something I'm worried about. I wish I had 25 more seconds of material to explain, but I'm already independent, and that's one of the reasons that I was hired.
Thank you, Rob Edwardson.
Moving on to Andy Hughes. You've said that you support restoring the senior sales tax exemption, but you've also pledged to push for a balanced budget without having to dig into reserves. Where would you cut to make this possible?
I would would go through the budget and cut what we would consider non-essential services. And by non-essential services, I mean things that we can do without, get along without. I mean, for instance, police and fire protection, we need to have. Do we need as many parks as we have? Parks are nice, but they're not something that you have to have. Just as an example, but I feel that there's sufficient non-essential items in the budget that we can afford to cover
Thank you, Andy Hughes. Loretto Jones, this question goes to you. The Juneau Police Department reported people complaining that campaign signs were disappearing from their property and your signs appearing without their permission. There were also reports in the Juneau Empire that you had been taken to court by your tenants for withholding deposits, and the court ruled against you in 3 cases. Would you like to use this opportunity to clear the air?
Thank you so much, Jacob. I appreciate this opportunity. I think sometimes you've got to, when you start to run for assembly, you encounter a lot of what I would refer to as a smear campaign. I had a guy call me and actually ask me to put up a sign in the flats. And I went to his house and I put up one sign. Now, someone took my picture and accused me of putting signs away, taking signs down. But the reality, gentlemen and ladies, was the police came to my home and they said, gosh, you're innocent. You didn't do that. So I was cleared by the police that it wasn't me and that my truck had no tie to that. So I call that a smear campaign. Now, as far as what I do with my own business, that is interesting. But I met with Alex after that came out and showed him the evidence that I had paid the deposits back. But you have to go through a court system in a certain period of time before you can pay those deposits back when damages occurred. Thank you.
Move on to Maria Gladziszewski. This is about housing. Going back to your 2014 campaign, you campaigned to expand housing options, especially increasing the allowable density for residential developments. What have you been able to accomplish as an assembly member these past 3 years in that realm?
In the housing realm, we put some city property for sale, so onto the market near DZ School, and we're in the process of doing that in Peterson Hill. So that's some progress. regarding housing. And what we worked on while I was on the Assembly was the Housing Action Plan. And, that needs to be implemented. It goes on for many pages. It's a long plan. And we started going through that. And the first thing was to adopt the plan and to hire a housing coordinator, which we did. And the last year, that person has a background in homelessness and has been pulled off that task onto the homeless issue. And we're going to hire a homeless coordinator to get the housing coordinator that we hired to do housing and to meet with developers and to make actual progress on all those issues. He has been pulled off the other way. So that is still Assembly top priority and still my top priority for the economy to get
Thank you,
make
Maria.
housing prices lower.
Thank you, Maria Gladziszewski. Jesse Kiehl, this question should sound familiar. As your day job is a staffer for Democratic State Senator Dennis Egan, the same question about how you ensure your political independence in a nonpartisan Assembly seat.
Well, thank you. That's a pretty easy one. Anybody who knows Dennis Egan knows that in his office he is the boss, and we all get a shot at him and trying to change his mind or inform him or do the staff work he needs. And he has taken very much, but in the end he makes his decisions and casts his votes. He's taken very much the same approach. He once served on the Juneau Assembly. And there are times when he's supported my positions and times when he's told me, I won't use his phrasing, but told me I was on the wrong track. And we have good discussions. And then in the end, I cast my votes at the Assembly. So there hasn't been a time when either one of us has told the other that they got to vote one way, and I don't think there ever will be. That's not his style, and it's certainly not mine.
Thank you, Jesse Kiehl.
Thank you. This last one is for Debbie White. On at least a couple of occasions, you've encouraged your fellow Assembly members to, as you put it, grow a backbone and not cave to the pressure of critical public testimony, referring to some of the critics at meetings as quote-unquote mob rule. I guess, in your opinion, what is the line between mob rule and citizens organizing around an issue?
Okay. Well, it would be nice if more citizens would bring more opinions to the Assembly rather than it being an echo chamber. And I'd have to say, yes, if I had a regret of anything I'd ever said on the Assembly, that was probably not my best moment. What was the rest of the question?
Between mob rule.
The line
and
between was when some of the emails, I engaged a few people and said that on that particular issue, this is why I felt the way I did, and I was getting back emails that were pretty derogatory and past the point of polite discourse between two people that disagree, because I still believe that most of us agree on most of the things most of the time. It'd be nice if we concentrated on that instead of just everybody seems to be fighting a lot more these days.
Thank you, Debbie White.
Thank you.
I think we'll now go to audience questions. These will go to each candidate, and please keep your responses to 30 seconds. We have this one on the card. Has Juneau reached a saturation point in its capacity for cruise ship visitors? If not, how will we know when that point has been reached, and who do you think should be part of that decision-making process? And I think we'll start with Rob Edwardson.
I think the cruise industry and obviously the people of Juneau ought to be a part of that process. The cruise industry does do studies. They do have economists. They do have researchers who determine what the saturation point is at different different ports and different communities. Have we reached the saturation point yet? No, I don't think so. I think it's projected to grow to 1.5 million, I think by 2023, but I would have to check those estimates.
Thank you, Rob Edwardson. Debbie White.
Well, how soon can we build a deep water port on the backside of Douglas? I think our biggest problem isn't necessarily a saturation of too many tourists coming here. It's that they come into a really narrow point and they have to disperse to get out to all the tours. I have small planes, helicopters go over my house all the time, and I just try to remind myself that somebody is having the time of their life, and people lots of people save their money for a great long time to be able to come
Thank
see what we live.
Thank you, Debbie White. Maria Gladziszewski.
As far as saturation point, we have 4 docks, and it's not every day that there are 4 ships in there, so there's certainly more capacity there. I mean, I'd like to see us focus on how can we, as they say, harvest more money from the people that do come and have it stay in Juneau and not go elsewhere. I think that we're taking the impact, so we should get the benefit. And we are actually getting a lot. We're getting not only sales tax, but all the port fees. So, and the whole community should be involved. I think that that's a community conversation.
Thank you, Maria Gladziszewski. Mr. Andy Hughes?
Well, the first question is, how do you determine when you reach the saturation point? I know that some people feel we have too many tourists now, and tourists is one of our very beneficial industries. I think that if saturation can be determined on number of tour docks, the answer to that is to develop a port out on West Douglas. But it's also saturation and is determined on.
Thank you, Andy Hughes. Mr. Chuck Collins.
I think that more than likely commerce will probably, and by commerce I mean business in itself, both the cruise industry and everything, will find out that saturation point. It's a breaking point of when we as citizens of this community have said that enough is enough. Have we reached that? I don't think so, but there have been some interesting other straws that might break that camel's back lately, so.
Thank you, Chuck Collins. Ms. Loretto Jones.
Well, one of the things I do is I am a boat captain, and you have got to get people that work on the water to be part of this answer as far as a saturation point. You're competing for a very small area. You need to have the tug industry involved in this conversation. You need to have the people of Juneau involved in this conversation. You need to have the float planes that fly in and out of that harbor, dodging between the tender boats, dodging between the float planes. All of those people need to be part of the formula.
Thank you. Loretto Jones. Mr. Jesse Kiehl.
Thanks. I think that the industry won't be saturated until their customers' experience degrades. I think the community holds the same standards, but it's not a week-long trip. It's home. And so I think we need to work really hard to bring the community and the industry together to take the steps and build the infrastructure we need to mitigate impacts of that industry on our town. I think the flight seeing noise solutions a couple years ago were a great example we can follow.
Thank you, Jesse Kiehl.
All right, this one we got by email. We'll start with Debbie White here. It's lengthy, so I'll paraphrase this one. But state law forbids political campaign signs along state-maintained roads. Offenders are given a 30-day notice to take signs down, but in many cases, that won't be until after the election. And that's allowed some signs to stay up through this. This audience member asks what that message sends when it comes to other rules, that these signs are still up.
Well, I have someone who's doing some research on that, because in Ketchikan they were actually able to get the state to back off of that rule, and he's trying to find the statute portion that he said that affected. And I have to say, I had some people that were helping with signs. One of them obviously likes really bright spray paint. And I really didn't give it a lot of thought when my signs were picked up. So.
Thank you, Debbie White. Maria Gladziszewski.
I think it's a short campaign season, a balance between people's right to express their opinion and the law, and obviously we should follow the law. And signs shouldn't be in the right of way, but then when you get on people's property, the law actually says signs can't be within 660 feet of the right of way, which basically takes somebody's entire property. So it's a tough issue. They definitely shouldn't be in the right of way.
Maria Gladziszewski. Andy Hughes.
Well, the law that's involved is the Federal Beautification Act that prohibits signs being visible from the state highways. I had an opportunity to put up a couple signs along loop road, and I decided not to because of the coming from DOT. It becomes a safety issue, distracted driving, and
Thank you, Andy Hughes. Chuck Collins?
I'm not sure what kind of message it sends, since I doubt if anybody even sees them unless they're in the wetlands. I think they're, I think 99% of people that are driving drive right by them and never see the signs. That being said, I used to own a sign company, so I pushed them really hard. I think we should always follow the law. I mean, we're called to do things decently and in order. However, I'll follow Debbie here. I mean, in a campaign like this, I have no idea where some of my signs even are, so.
Loretto Jones?
Well, I think you have to be accountable because there is a law in place. So you have to be accountable where those signs go as a candidate. But according to the newspaper, it's not as bad as it used to be, right? I mean, it used to get pretty tough with the signs. So I think we're all trying to learn to follow the law, but it is an unusual law, and until you really research that law, you really do not understand exactly where you can put the signs. I've quit putting signs up. It's just too controversial.
Thank you, Loretto Jones. Jesse Kiehl?
The state law in question was written to keep billboards out of Alaska, which are just a blight on the landscape, and I support that law. At the same time, the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides the strongest protection for political expression, and a supporter wanting to put up a sign is political expression. I actually think that DOT, a department I've been critical of pretty often, found a decent compromise between the constitutional rights and the state law with their 30-day standard.
Jesse Kiehl? Rob Edwardson?
I have wonderful sign people, sign volunteers, and one of the things that they do is they try to follow the law. And if we put a sign someplace where it shouldn't be, we'll remove it. If it's not going to take 30 days, if it's only going to take a half a day, then we'll remove it. And I think it's as simple as that. I think DOT and CBJ do a wonderful job on monitoring signs, and I think it's just easier following the law as it is.
Thank you, Rob Edwardson.
Thank you very much. We're going to squeeze in one more audience question. It says, if elected as an assembly member, where do you place education funding during tight budgets? Would you continue to fund to the cap, the maximum amount allowed, as past assemblies have consistently done in Juneau? And we'll start with Maria Gladziszewski.
Yes, it is the highest priority. Public safety, education. I could go on, but yes, I will do everything I can to make sure that happens.
Thanks, Ms. Gladziszewski. Mr. Andy Hughes.
I would go beyond that and also fund preschool.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Chuck Collins.
I think we are in times, and I fully support funding education to the cap. It's interesting that we talk about public safety in there because apparently we're not funding it as much as we should be. But just education is the life changer for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Loretto Jones.
Well, as a former university professor, there's no other way than saying yes. I've seen what's come out of the public schools, and I believe we can do a better job. Yes, you have to fund it to the cap because these kids are our future.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr. Jesse Kiehl.
Well, lest it sound like an echo chamber in here, no, I actually do agree. I have voted consistently to fund education to the cap, K-12, and I think that's a wise investment in our future. It's a wise investment in our people because education equalizes opportunities. So beyond that, I want to point out that we've worked really hard to protect UAS as a major educational resource and cultural resource in our community, as well as an economic driver. So all the way through the educational spectrum.
Mr. Kiehl. Rob Edwardson, please.
Yes, I would vote to fund education to the cap, just like everybody else who spoke before me. Education is a silver bullet. It gives you opportunities that you haven't, that you wouldn't have otherwise. That said, I think Juneau's education right now is great. Can it be better? Yes, it can be better. But I think we should be trying to improve it. We should perhaps fund early childhood education as well.
Mr. Edwardson. Debbie White.
Yes, thank you. Of course, we're all gonna agree on this. We should always fund our schools to the maximum allowed by state law, but I think it's also important to look for opportunities to fill in some of the other gaps in the educational system, and people refer to it as going around the cap. It's always disturbing how little of this actually gets to the classroom, and I think there are ways that the business community could help some of our teachers take some of the strain off.
Thank you very much, Debbie White. That's all the time we have for questions, but we'd like to give the candidates a chance to sum up, and they have 30 seconds because we're feeling generous. We'll go in reverse order from the introductions, and so it remains with you, Debbie White.
Right now that I have 30 seconds? Okay. Like I said, I consider myself responsive. I'm out there on social media. Anybody can find my cell phone number if you have an opinion. I do more than just read the city emails. If I start getting emails that all look the same, I'm going to cut and paste an answer right back to you. So, but if you take the time to call me, I will definitely take your call. Thank you.
Rob Edwardson.
I guess I'd just like to give a message. The future belongs to those who show up. I think it was Buckminster Fuller that said that. No matter who you vote for, I encourage you to vote October 3rd and encourage others to vote October 3rd. As far as the message from me goes, like I said, you've already paid for my experience, you've already paid for my skills. I'm offering those to the city and borough of Juneau, and I would be humble and appreciative if you voted for me.
Jesse Kiehl.
Well, thank you. I would appreciate your vote on Tuesday the 3rd. I have a record of accomplishment on the Assembly, and I want to keep bringing a long-term vision to the Assembly's work. We all get mad about problems, but my record is one of working together with people on solutions. So I'm asking for your vote to keep working together to solve problems and seize opportunities for Juneau's future.
Thank you, Jesse Kiehl. Loretto Jones.
It's always a challenge, but it's great when you have people running against you because it makes you really work for this position, and that's what we need. Everybody should run for assembly at least once because you learn more about your community, you learn more about the needs, and it makes you a better person. Alaska is in a multi-billion-dollar deficit. We are in a recession. Let me ask you a question. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Thank you, Loretto Jones. Chuck Collins.
Yes, thank you. And as I stated, please get out and vote and get your neighbors to vote. But, you know, a few years ago we took away benefits from a group. I'm going to give them back. We have police and fire departments that are lacking with the current assembly, and I think we need to make a change on that, and I can bring that change to us. We need to have a more responsive assembly body, and I'm responsive. Anybody that's ever done business with me knows that I put customer service first.
Chuck Collins. Mr. Andy Jones.
We need to, Andy Jones. Andy Jones speaking here. I feel we need to make our community more affordable. We need to also provide for the opportunity for building a good solid foundation for our children from birth through high school. As they say, a house is only as good as its foundation. Well, a child's success is only as good as their foundation. And we need to provide for security of our
Thank you, Mr. Andy
community.
Hughes. And Maria Gladziszewski.
It's been an honor to serve this community for the last few years, and my track record is clear. It's not just idle talk sitting up here. I have a proven track record of seeking and building agreement. I work with everyone, and I gather as much as information as possible, and I listen to everybody. And as citizens who care about our future, together, there's no problem we can't solve together. There's a lot of divisiveness going on right now in our community and in our nation, and I think we are a great town, and we can do great things together.
Thank you, Maria Gladziszewski.
All right, that's it. That concludes the 2017 Juneau Votes Assembly Candidate Forum. A special thanks to all the candidates and all the volunteers who made it possible.
And this forum. This forum has been live streamed on Facebook and will be rebroadcast on KTOO 104.3. The school board will be broadcast at 7 p.m. and then this segment will start at 8 p.m. And it will be rebroadcast tomorrow at KTOO at 1 o'clock and also on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. I'm Jacob Resnick.
I'm Alex McCarthy. Good night.
Good night.